Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, September 25th meeting of the Evanston Plan Commission. The first action on the agenda is the declaration of a quorum.
Commissioner Draper? Here. Commissioner Dubin? Commissioner Goddard?
Here.
Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Isaac? Commissioner Pagozzi? Here. Commissioner Sloss? Here. Commissioner Hugo? And Chair Lewis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, so we have a quorum. The next item would be the approval of the minutes of the September 11th meeting, but those will be reviewed at the next scheduled Plan Commission meeting. So tonight we have two items of new business. The first is a map amendment for the Howard Street rezoning, number 19 PLND 0080. So, Mr. Mangum, can you?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Plan Commission, members of the public. This is a map amendment request on Howard Street to rezone the properties between 951 and 1125 Howard Street from the C1 commercial district, which is existing zoning shown on the screen in the middle of the screen here, to the B2 district, which is the current zoning district to the west of that area. So this would range from Ridge Avenue to the east to Barton on the west. So it's that whole block there. And again, shown in the cross-hatched area is the proposed rezoning area. There are several differences between the C1 and B2 districts. However, much of the bulk requirements are the same. The height limit is the same for the two. There is an increased FAR allowed as part of the B2 district. The other main difference between the two is that the B2 district is a mixed-use district, so it allows for residential dwelling units. Staff feels that this area of Howard Street could be improved with the number of development options increased by allowing for mixed use in this stretch. And as you can see, most of the other requirements are the same or very similar. As far as planned developments, again, fairly similar. The main difference being in FAR, where under the current, there's a 1.0 FAR that's allowed, with the 1.0 as a site development allowance, where B2 would allow 2.0 with a 1.0 site development allowance. The heights, again, are very similar, 45 feet for the base zoning, and the site development allowance currently would allow for an additional 15 feet, and the proposed zoning district would allow for an additional 12 feet. So with that, staff is recommending approval, and these are the standards for amendments. This was noticed properly with a mailed notice within 500 feet of the properties, including a significant number of properties within the city of Chicago limits, and also in the newspaper. That concludes the summary of the staff report and available for questions. Thank you.
All right, so we'll open it up for questions from commissioners. Are there any questions? Commissioner Sloss.
Is there any difference? What's the difference between the parking requirements for the C1 versus the B2 zones?
There would not be difference in the parking requirements. It would be based on the use. So that the use would require the same amount of parking. And I should add, there is a development proposal on this block that involves a mixed-use project and residential. And so this does not, the rezoning encompasses more properties than only that development parcel would include, but it is a necessity for a potential development to go forward. That development's obviously not on the agenda tonight. It would be a planned development, so it would come before this commission at a future date.
And would that development be allowed under the current zoning?
It would not under C1, because it involves residential, and C1 does not allow for residential.
Other questions?
Would none of the existing businesses or properties would be affected by the zoning unless they wanted to make a change to their current use? Is that correct?
Correct. If any of them became non-conforming, there would be legal non-conforming uses that they'd be able to continue operating into the future.
So tailing along on that, what if they wanted to modify their property under the current usage to do an addition or to improve their property? How would they be affected?
Depend on the use. If it's a special use, then a special use permit would be required for the expansion of a special use there. If it were a use that would no longer be a permitted use and a prohibited use, I think we identified the only use there is the pawn shop, and I think that is already a non-conforming use. An expansion was proposed, then the avenue would be for a major variation request.
All right.
Are there any other C1 zoning on Howard Street? Here it is.
Good question. Just a second. I can pull that up. So there is one stretch, another stretch further west, mostly the block east of Dodge, and then also continues for a couple parcels to west of Dodge, California.
So that's basically the target, and is that right?
Sorry, so that's the stretch that's on the strip on Howard Street, on either side of Dodge there, and then there's also the large shopping center where Target and Best Buy are located.
Mm-hmm. So 2 areas, yeah. And then throughout the city, there's like for C1, there's maybe half a dozen other areas that are C1.
That's correct. They're predominantly larger parcel areas where there are shopping centers, as that's what the zoning district allows for. But there are a couple stretches like these on Howard Street that are a commercial corridor or strip stretch of C1.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Let's see, we have one person signed up, David Block. Would you like?
I can speak on his behalf. Good evening, everyone. I signed up David Block. I don't know if that's okay if I can speak for him. He's running late, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I should go over a few things. First of all, if you're going to speak tonight, we'll make this to everyone. I need you to swear that you will tell the truth. So can you please raise your right hand and say, "I will tell the truth"? Or you've got to do it too.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. And second of all questions, all statements, you'll come up to the podium, speak into the microphone, and please state your name and your address for the record. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Jenny Calero. I swear to tell the truth. Good evening. I am Jenny Calero, but I am a member of Evergreen Real Estate Development Group, and who's located in the Loop area in Chicago. David Block he's the director of development of the developing company, and he was to speak, but he's running a little late. So the discussion I wanted to give briefly is that we are working in partnership with the Council for Jewish Elderly on the development that would be located on 999 through 1015 Howard Street. So we are proposing the new construction of a 4-story 60-unit affordable housing unit, which would be for seniors, so it is age restricted. It would be multi-use, so commercial storefront with the residential units on top. So this has to do a lot with the rezoning process here. We have submitted a PD application, which is currently under review, and we have received comments on it. So we are waiting to address those areas. But I guess David Block might have had other things to discuss. I just wanted to kind of give background of the development. I know that it'll probably be in a different board meeting to discuss further details on the development, but that is all. I am in favor of the rezoning process.
Okay, and no questions.
Questions? Sorry, I'm feeling it. I thought he'd be here.
That's all right. It's a pretty light night tonight. Would you be available to take any questions if commissioners have them
Of course.
of you, although we're not hearing the development, so, okay, all right, very good, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so, that was your comment and question, so we're done with the public comment portion. Let's see, so I believe we can close the public testimony portion and go to deliberation. So, does anyone have any comments or opinions that they would like to state? Commissioners? Commissioner Goddard.
Well, I think this is an excellent idea. If we're trying to redevelop that part of, I mean, it's made such great strides in recent years that I think this is just a natural outflow of that. I think it'd be a great idea.
From the few examples you gave of the other examples of C1s, it sounds like those are more for shopping districts, like shopping malls. So if we're thinking of that context, I would agree that this seems like it makes sense to change it over to something more suited to be along the street.
All right, any other comments? So I guess we have to review the standards for amendments. So Scott, would you like to read them?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. The first standard is whether the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive general plan as adopted and amended by time to time.
So does everyone agree that this is a positive action and fits with the comprehensive general plan? All right, we're in agreement.
Okay. Whether the proposed amendment is compatible with the overall character of existing development in the immediate vicinity of the subject property.
I think we might even say that it's more appropriate. So satisfied.
Whether the proposed amendment will have an adverse effect on the value of adjacent properties.
There's no evidence to say that, so it's satisfied.
And the adequacy of public facilities and services.
We'll let staff speak to that.
Yeah, I don't believe there would be a change in the,
All right.
the needed services.
All right, so that's satisfied. All right. That being said, is there anyone who would like to make a motion?
I move approval of the zoning ordinance map amendment for the Howard Street rezoning from C1 to B2 in the subject area.
Per staff, okay. Any seconds? Second, Bagosi. All right, so let's have a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Draper? Commissioner Goddard?
Aye.
Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Pagotzi? Yes. Commissioner Sloss? Chair Lewis?
Yes.
That receives unanimous approval.
All right, thank you very much. So that brings us to our second item on the agenda, which is a text amendment for accessory recreational cannabis use, number 19 PLND 0078.
I will be giving that
Ms.
presentation.
Jones, thank you.
Good evening, members of the commission, members of the public. Megan Jones, Neighborhood and Land Use Planner. To get started, I'll go briefly over what the state regulations are that brought us to this point. In 2013, the Illinois General Assembly approved the Compassionate Use of Medical Cannabis Pilot Program Act. This actually went into effect on January 1st of 2014. It allowed the establishment of medical cannabis dispensaries and cultivation centers and prescribing of medical cannabis to patients and caregivers in the state. This particular act also included a 1,000-foot distance requirement from certain pre-existing uses such as schools and daycares, but this will no longer be in place for new medical dispensaries. Just this year, actually a few months ago, the Illinois General Assembly actually signed into law the Illinois Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. This will actually become effective on January 1st of 2020. It will legalize the possession and private use of cannabis for residents over the age of 21 from licensed dispensaries. It will also prohibit the use of cannabis in public spaces, schools, childcare facilities, and other locations, but does not alter the 2013 medical cannabis pilot program. Municipalities also have the ability to regulate cannabis-related uses through zoning restrictions, provided that they are reasonable and are not in conflict with this act. I also want to note that the statute requires that any cannabis dispensary be at least 1,500 feet from any other pre-existing dispensary or medical cannabis dispensary. Do want to point out that Evanston does currently have a medical cannabis dispensary, which is located within our Maple Avenue garage, specifically 1804 Maple. This is in the RP zoning district. At the time that it was approved in 2015, it was actually considered a medical office that was subject to distancing requirements, which were pretty strict at that particular time. And this particular dispensary is operated by PharmaCann. And PharmaCann has recently stated that they have the intention to pursue co-locating a recreational cannabis dispensary at its current location, which will be in accordance with the first wave of dispensaries that will be allowed under that new act. This map actually shows the map that we looked at back in 2014 when the first act was actually signed and enacted. The orange areas are actually the areas where a medical dispensary would have been able to locate. So after looking at the distancing requirements and our zoning, it actually ended up being fairly restrictive. And it just so happened that the city also had space that was available to be leased. So the PharmaCann location ended up locating on Maple. More recently, on September 16th, the City Council was actually provided an overview of both of these acts, current municipal regulations, and possible next steps for the zoning, licensing, taxation, and other relevant provisions. And some of the key discussion points as part of that presentation included having dispensaries only be allowed as a special use, also having distance requirements from sensitive uses, but excluding daycare facilities, which would then open up a few more areas that possible dispensary could locate in. It also added in the continuing the practice of prohibiting smoking establishments such as hookah lounges, and just expanding that to include cannabis smoking establishments, and essentially not having on-site consumption. They also mentioned in the future, when we look at this particular use, that industrial areas would be more appropriate for production uses such as infusers. And finally, they proposed that we have a cap of 3 dispensary locations within the city. Now, this particular chart shows where the Chicagoland area is in terms of allowing or prohibiting recreational cannabis uses or just cannabis uses in general. You'll see that there are a number who have either voted to outright prohibit cannabis uses within their city limits and others that are kind of trending towards that. And there are several who have not picked up this particular item for consideration yet, but there are a number who are trending towards allowing cannabis uses within their city limits. And actually recently, as you can see in that particular chart, Oak Park and Skokie are some of the cities who have voted to actually allow that use. And our neighbor to the south, Chicago, is proposing something that's a little bit more extensive. They'll have, I believe it's 7 different sub areas where they will allow that particular use to exist, and this would actually exclude the downtown area. So there are a number of considerations that are being taken up, and it's happening at a fairly fast rate. I gave the commission a handout actually that is from a panel discussion, I think that Scott attended earlier today, that has a more expansive list of the cities and where things are with regards to allowing or permitting cannabis uses within various municipalities, and it expands a little bit outside of the Chicagoland area. This particular map is updated. It shows the existing location in black with the 1,500-foot radius around it, and also highlights the schools that are within town with several different rings around them, and those represent a 500-foot, a 750-foot, and a 1,000-foot radius to give a better idea of how expansive we could make the restrictions with regards to locations. And also we've highlighted mostly the commercial districts and the business districts where we would be considering allowing this particular use. So all of that being considered, staff is proposing to create a new definition for cannabis dispensaries and create special regulations for this particular use and revise our ordinance to make them special uses within our RP, our D districts, our C districts, our B districts, and the O1 zoning districts, as well as in the ODM, OCSC, and OH overlay zoning districts. So we would be creating a new definition that encompasses both medical and recreational cannabis and ensures that those particular uses are essentially in line with what the state regulations are. And for the use, the chart below that actually states where we are proposing to have these dispensaries as a special use. And I do want to point out that we have prohibited the use in our M districts, our T and U districts, which are Northwestern's campus, our OS, which is open space, our industrial districts, and the West Evanston district, as well as in all residential zoning areas. As a part of this, we would also add a new section for special regulations that would be pertaining to cannabis-related uses. Essentially, this would be establishing where the use can go. It would also establish the distance requirement. Specifically, would be stating what the state requirements are with the 1,500 square feet from another cannabis dispensary use, as well as proposing a 750-foot radius from existing public or private education institutions, which would be elementary, middle, or high schools. We would also be proposing hours of operation from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., 7 days of the week. So with that, staff recommends that tonight the Plan Commission make a positive recommendation to City Council for the proposed text amendment regarding cannabis dispensary businesses and refer discussion of additional regulations that are related to cannabis cultivation centers, processors, transporters, infusers, and craft growers to the Zoning Committee on a date to be determined. So that concludes the presentation.
All right, thank you very much. So, are there any questions from commissioners of staff? No. Yeah.
What was the staff thinking in restricting industrial areas for dispensaries?
Well, for the dispensaries, those are a little bit more retail oriented. They would have that type of operation for the most part. So the thought was to limit those to more of the business and commercial areas. And then in the future, for the other uses that are more process oriented and creating, to have those be more so in the industrial areas.
So I think you said that the review by City Council had stipulated a limit to the number of dispensaries. Why was that not included? Is that a purposeful idea, or?
You mean why was that not included in what
The
staff is
recommendation,
proposing?
yes, what staff is recommending.
We could definitely add that. That was something that I think was viewed more so as something as prohibiting the number of licenses that we would allow.
Right.
But that's something that can be added if.
So there was no special reason for discussion, like the complications that if you had perhaps, say, more applications than permitted uses, then how to sort out who gets what and all the complications that recur from that, or is that?
Chair Lewis, I can interject if you'd like.
Please.
Michelle Mason Cup, City Attorney. So to get some context on the cap and that information, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes, but yeah.
A little faintly? Okay.
Yeah, faintly,
All right,
yeah.
better?
Better.
So to get some understanding of that reasoning, I think in discussions with Scott and Megan regarding the cap, we were concerned if we get a flood of applications, how do we process them with a cap of 3? Who gets priority? The City of Chicago is establishing a lottery system. And so staff's recommendation would be maybe we get the same result of a small number of dispensaries by the buffers, because once we looked at the map and established those buffers, it might be a very similar result. That was just the thought process behind the I believe what your zoning staff has put in the packet.
Oh, all right, thank you. So just to be clear, we are only acting on dispensaries and not on any other of the possible institutions or parts that I believe there's growing and what do they call it, infusing, with
Right.
putting it into other,
Right.
like brownie making and things like it. We're not doing, we're not discussing
that is not
anything else.
up for consideration this evening.
Okay, and that's, and the urgency of the dispensaries is because in January 1st, this becomes law and a right to have dispensaries, but the action for these other institutions is actually later on during 2020.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Correct.
All right. So we have a little bit of time for that, I guess, is the point. I also have a question. Well, please go ahead. Mr. Draper, yeah.
Regarding the existing dispensary, so it looks like on the map that it falls over the boundary of being from the distances of the schools. does that mean it's grandfathered in because it was already part of the pilot program, or would we be discussing that now?
Okay.
Yeah.
So the existing location, the black ring that's around that is the 1,500-foot radius that's required between dispensaries. So that does overlap the school radius, but that's not what the radius is for that particular.
So that's just saying that you couldn't have another dispensary in that whole area.
Exactly.
So if these are schools, was there any consideration of other institutions where this might be, for example, the community recreation centers that primarily service young adults and things like Fleetwood, Jourdain, or Chandler Newburgh, or even the Levy Center and things? Were those ever considered as being excluded, or?
I think the main considerations, I think, were for the members of the population that are younger. So it would be the schools, the daycare centers, and things of that nature. For community centers such as like the Levy Center, that's a wider variety of resident and would likely have some oversight of the younger population that's there. So that was not considered to be excluded.
I guess my image of like Chandler, Newburgh, and things are that they provide to younger people, provide activities for younger people. But all right. And then I have one other question about, there's a certificate of zoning compliance that is being required. I think it was on the previous slide. So I'm sorry, so is this different than any other activity, so what is this, and what does it ensure for in the process? What's the benefit of it, I guess, is the question.
The certificate of zoning compliance is essentially just the staff signing off saying that this particular use is allowed within the city or is allowed at this particular location. So it's a pretty general piece of paper that.
All right, but my understanding that all of these are special uses, so they would have to go through either zoning board of appeals,
right,
and so they would have some sort of compliance either stated there or not, right?
Right.
So is this a necessary portion of the ordinance, or
for this one, I think it would deal more so with the process from the state level, when the medical dispensaries were being proposed. There were a number of different applications that were coming in that needed to have some kind of proof that what they were proposing to do was actually permitted within the city and at a particular location they might have been looking at. So it was essentially just that part that they needed for their licensing requirements.
I guess I could see that.
So this would be kind of a preliminary step if they needed to have that.
Preliminary step, I see it. Yeah.
Additionally, Chair Lewis, if I may, this section, the 6411, is written intended to in the future cover all the cannabis-related businesses. So there may be some other businesses that could be permitted by right, for example.
Permitted by right, because that's when this would be needed, I think. Yeah.
More so, yes. Yeah. So we got to 6-4-11-4, 5, 6, 7, and some of those are permitted uses. A certificate of zoning compliance would still be required for those uses.
Okay. Any Commissioner Halleck?
Just a question on monitoring. If you have these facilities and people are using them, going to them, and they're in legal locations, is there going to be extra monitoring that, that it's you're not smoking a joint outside, and there's I just can imagine that there might be a lot of abuse of the rule, as long as there isn't a cop going by all the time. And I don't know how far you go with this monitoring, but it just seems like that point of sale could easily expand, and I don't think that's the intent. So it's not, maybe it's not really a question for us, but it's just a concern.
That wouldn't necessarily be under the purview of the Plan Commission, but I will say that these locations are required to have a security plan and monitoring, especially within their site. So, and especially if they're a special use, that could be something that we add on as a condition, that they have some kind of exterior monitoring or something like that as a part of granting that special use.
So no eating of a gummy bear before you walk out the door. I'm sorry. All right. Any other questions? So questions from the public. Now, I notice someone else has walked in, so if you want to speak, you have to sign up. I have one person signed up for this, and it's Don Williams. Oh, questions. These are questions of the petition. No questions. Okay. All right. So if there are no questions, it's now is the time to all right, so we're now going to open up the floor for public comment. Let me point out now that it is your right to ask for a continuance. All continuances must be in writing and must be stated to, correct me if I'm wrong on this, to ask for time to dispute evidence that has been presented at this commission. All right, so with that, I call Don Williams to make any statement they would like to make regarding this.
Commissioners, if I may, thank you guys very much for having us. I'd like to have Jeremy Unruh, who actually is from PharmaCann, actually speak first, but he got in late, so he did not sign up. If we can...
I'm sorry, I'm offering for other people, if they would like to speak, just to come and sign up, all right? That's all I would...
May I approach?
Yes, and you can sign up after you speak. We trust you, all right?
May I speak?
Please,
Okay, thank you.
please. State your name and...
Certainly.
Yeah.
So my name is Jeremy Unruh, spelled U-N-R-U-H, and I am the Director of Regulatory Affairs for PharmaCann, and we are the company that owns and operates the dispensary located at 1804 Maple Street.
I also have to stop on, this is a technicality. Do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Okay, very good. Okay, go on, proceed.
I so affirm. And so not only am I the government relations person for this company, and we are a company that started in Illinois 5 years ago during the medical cannabis licensing application process. I am a former prosecuting attorney here in Cook County, from traffic court all the way up through the presiding judge's courtroom at 26 in California. I then practiced private law downtown for about 8 years before one of my partners applied for these medical cannabis licenses and was more successful than any other group in the state. And so he and I and another person left to start this company. And in the last 5 years, we have been awarded medical cannabis licenses in 7 other states in the eastern United States. So New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, Massachusetts, where we do have an adult use or recreational dispensary there, as well as Virginia. I want to thank you folks here as Evanstonians, because to my knowledge, there is no other relationship between a licensed cannabis dispensary and its landlord, the host municipality. That's unique. And so I don't know if you understand or appreciate the impact of that, but in my space, in the cannabis space, that's kind of a big deal. And it's a solid partnership that I hope you all value as much as we value it. A couple of things that I just want to underscore based on the discussion that I heard. Use is a land use. it's adult use retail sales. It's not use of cannabis. That's permitted by this new Cannabis Regulation and Taxation Act, this big 610-page bill that you've seen a little bit out of. And so what we are asking to do is to be authorized to sell adult use cannabis to consumers in and out of our medical dispensary. I'm here as a resource because I have been in this space for so long, and I have done this in other municipalities, and I know the issues. But to us, the real criticality here is if Evanston is going to authorize the retail sale of adult use cannabis, one of the things that we are able to bring to the table to Evanston is the fact that there is a 3% tax that is available to be levied on our total sales each year. Our medical dispensary our adult use dispensary in Wareham, Massachusetts is roughly the same size from a community of roughly the same character and nature. And in the first 6 months of 2019, we remitted a $300,000 check to that municipality, which means that for the year, we will remit approximately $600,000. Wareham, Massachusetts also charges a 3% tax on our total sales. So that's the revenue that we will anticipate in a dispensary and an adult use dispensary here. And so the issue for us is figuring out how we can be permitted by the municipality to serve adult use customers on January 1st of 2020. And navigating that process through the various commissions and boards and approvals can be time consuming. And so I would just ask the Plan Commission to be mindful of that as it makes its decisions, that we would love to be able to serve patients on that day one, because we think that that optimizes our relationship with the community. And so I guess the only other thing I would want to say is in terms of security, our facility currently has about 35 cameras that monitor the perimeter as well as the interior. We keep 90 days worth of storage footage. 90 days worth of storage footage is stored on about 25 terabytes worth of data. And just to provide some context to you, the entire written collection of the United States Library of Congress can be held on 10 terabytes worth of data. So that's the kind of security functionality we bring to these facilities. The same security that's in our dispensary now is plugged into the statute, the adult use statute. So what our security requirements are under the medical regs, in order to expedite the regulatory process at the state level, the sponsors of the bill actually pulled those security and safety and consumer protection regulations out and plugged them straight into the statute. So we will be abiding by those safety, security, and consumer protection obligations that we that Evanstonians currently enjoy now. So if there's anything I can do to answer questions for you folks, I'm happy to do that. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Oh, I need to sign in. Yeah.
And you're Mr. Williams, right?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Good evening. Again, my name is Don Williams. I'm the Regional Director of Government Relations for MedMen Enterprises, and currently we are in a acquisition of PharmaCann. So if indeed everything goes through with our acquisition, we will be the new proprietors of the Maple Avenue location. And I swear to tell the truth, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, you already did that. He walked in late,
Okay. So what I really like to do real quickly is just read some prepared statements to give you an idea about who MedMen is and how we've been operating in the retail adult use cannabis space. MedMen is one of the larger cannabis companies in North America. We were founded about 10 years ago in 2010, and now we operate in 12 states across the U.S. and are publicly traded on the Canadian Securities Exchange. We do everything from cultivation, manufacturing to dispensing, but we primarily see ourselves as a retailer that's mainstreaming and normalizing marijuana. As part of our government relations team, I'm responsible for engaging with communities, thought leaders, and elected officials and staff to build deep relationships in the communities in which we operate. In terms of community engagement, we know our success is based upon those deep relationships and what we build with our neighbors. So we join local chambers of commerce, neighborhood associations, and we invest financially in those local community-based organizations. Our retail staff quarterly will volunteer quarterly at local nonprofits, and before we even open up a store, we will canvass the neighborhood in which we are in and actually do door knocking and really invite folks into our store. We also invest in our employees. So we are the only national cannabis company today with a bi-coastal collective bargaining agreement with the United Food and Commercial Worker Union. We pay our employees a living wage. We offer full health care benefits to our full-time and part-time employees. And because we are publicly traded in Canada, we offer all of our employees stock options in the company, so they're also owners in this company. At MedMen, we pride ourselves in having a diverse workforce. So 58% of our employees are made up of minorities or people of color, and while women hold approximately 21% of leadership roles in traditional businesses, at MedMen, 20% of those leadership roles are in the cannabis industry. So we host and participate in local job fairs to recruit directly from the community and to ensure our employees represent the communities most impacted by the failed war on drugs. MedMen is committed to hiring locally and providing industry-leading wages and benefits to our employees. We pride ourselves in setting the gold standard for compliant operation. Our 10-person legal and compliance team is responsible for developing all of our standard operating procedures, audits, and daily check to ensure that we're always in compliance with state and local regulations. We spend significant time training our employees and crafting education campaigns to help our customers, especially those that are new to cannabis. We teach proper dosing of product, hold first-time consumer trainings, safe consumption trainings, and how to safely store product at home away from underage family members. The safety and security of our customers, staff, and surrounding community are our primary priority, and we have devised a two-pronged queuing plan to responsibly queue customers around the facility both during typical operations and during the heavy traffic days. We believe strongly in establishing deep ties to our local community, which is why we did outreach ahead of time, and we look forward to continuing these relationships. We see it as our responsibility to recognize and address disproportionate impact of the failed war on drugs that has been impacted on these communities through grants to community-based organizations. We've also conducted record expungement clinics, job training, and job placement services. To Commissioner Halleck's question, in regards to security, we've designed this retail to blend in with the rest of the community and the neighboring businesses. We have a strict security plan where only people 21 years of age or older can come inside, and we have purposely designed the entrances and exist for any possible queuing off the street. Those that can see inside the store will not be able to see any product. And we've really worked closely with our architect team to ensure our design is tasteful and aligned with the surrounding businesses. The symbol MedMen that you will see outside our business does not denote any sort of cannabis use, and there will not be any flashy cannabis signage, leaves or crosses. It will be a very discreet aesthetic. And while we anticipate this to be a successful location, it will not scream at a cannabis establishment. Because we're in such a evolving and highly regulated industry, we believe most successful cannabis market includes a mixture of a multi-state operator like ourselves, along with local organizations as well. And we have the experience opening and running compliant cannabis operations. So our participation in the cannabis market here in Evanston will ensure that there are strong middle-class union jobs with full health care benefits, living wages, and stock options in our company. And that completes my remarks, and thank you again for having us. And
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, any other members of the public? All right, with that, we'll we do. Oh, please. And you will have to sign in also.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tyree Crosby. I don't have any prepared remarks. I actually came here to attend the economic development meeting. Then I heard that you all were talking about zoning related to the cannabis industry, so I figured I'd come in here as well. And I swear to tell the truth. Also.
All right, thank you.
I'm originally from Evanston, Illinois. I am the sole proprietor of Lighthouse Dispensing Company, LLC, and I'm looking forward to putting in several applications once the recreational applications are available from the state, somewhere around October 1st, if not before. Really, I'm just taking the time to introduce myself to you all and try to build some relationships and keep up with the status of zoning and everything. I'm in the pre-planning stage, and I would like to hopefully scope out some real estate here and have that as a part of one of my applications if possible. So again, my name is Tyree Crosby, and if I can get some contact information from any of you all, I'd appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Competition. You'll have to sign in, please. All right, if you can come here. Thank you. All right, with that, we'll close the public testimony portion. Now I'm going to open it up to questions from the commissioners of any of the people who have testified, or also of staff, if there are any other questions that have come up. Commissioner Pagozzi.
So, can you explain again what the process? You know, Chicago is going to have a lottery. Is Evanston developing any sort of a system to sort of fairly distribute the licenses for the anticipated applicants?
So as proposed in the regulations, it would be a special use permit, and it would be subject to those distancing. So as long as those distancing requirements are met, then an applicant could submit a special use permit, and that'd be considered by the zoning board and the city council. So we're not currently proposing the cap. If there were a cap, then we would recommend that there be some sort of additional procedure if there were that, flood of applications that exceeded the number in the cap.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, you're done? Okay. Other questions? All right, well, while people are thinking, I will ask a few. So what was you showed on the distance, the buffer from, I've forgotten the term, the uses of 500, 750, and 1,000 feet as a buffer distance, and you're recommending 750. Is there a reason for that? Does that align with any other kind of standards, or is it other precedent, or is that just feels good?
I don't know if your zoning staff is going to weigh in, but the Medical Cannabis Act set out some buffers for schools, daycare facilities, and those buffers were 1,000 feet. And so since the state statute, the only buffer that they set is distance buffers between the dispensaries. So the city council had weighed in and said they seek only for schools a buffer, and so your staff is presenting these as options.
Okay, and the distance of 750 feet is?
I have no.
Just
seems reasonable. I don't know.
Reasonable.
Probably
okay.
Because it's analogous to the 1,000 feet from the medical cannabis. It's not that far away.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and I think just to add on that, I think there was some concern at the council level that the previous map under the Medical Cannabis Act was overly restrictive.
Yeah.
So this map allows the options for a lesser distancing requirement as 750 that would be less onerous, and then additionally in removing the daycare locations as buffers, that also has opened up other areas of the city.
Okay. All right. Another question, I think this was brought on by Mr. Williams's testimony, is there any regulation or so signage and visual display of product? I think Mr. Williams is saying they're not going to do that, but is there regulation against display? I mean, how is signage controlled? I mean, this is by their goodwill, but is there any thought to how signage and should it be, I guess, is also part of, it might be just sorted out by a cultural shift, but, I'm just wondering if there is some thought to.
There are some regulations in the Act on outdoor advertising. We could look in this a little bit further. I'm not 100% clear whether this is only billboard-type advertising or also includes advertising on the premises itself or the exterior of the premises, but some of the limitations are cannot be within 1,000 feet of schools, playgrounds, rec centers, daycare centers, parks, libraries, arcades, public transit vehicles, or shelter, or on public property, and that the signs can't show consumption, promote overconsumption, make health claims, include images of cannabis, include images of toys, cartoons, or animals that appeal to children.
Oh, so that does state that it can't have images of cannabis.
Correct. It's a summary of the Act that I'm
Okay,
reading from.
in the Act, it states that, so it is controlled. All right.
I've got a follow-up question on that, Scott. So if that's controlled by the Act, but the Act also says cannot be within 1,000 feet, so we're going less than there than on the Act for that requirement, but everything else would stay.
Well, for the advertising, it says it cannot be within 1,000 feet, right?
Okay, so that's just the signs section. Okay.
All right. I actually have a question for probably Mr. Both of you. So you, Mr. Urga, is it? I'm sorry. Is it? It's Unruh. Mr. Unruh. Do you have plans to open other facilities, and tied to that, are you only in the dispensing end, or are you anticipating being, vertically integrated in the system?
Sure. So let me unpack the statute a little bit, and this may kind of give you a little bit of background for the decisions that you're going to make now and then on over the next 6 to 18 months, okay? Because this has to do with the other licensees that will be coming and when they'll be coming. So there are 55 medical cannabis dispensaries in the state right now, and they are dispersed by geography. Here in this area, I believe we're in 2 townships. That's our geographic district, whereas as you go downstate to the less populated areas, they're the size of a state police district, which can be about 3 counties in size. So the existing 55 medical dispensaries will be allowed to do 2 things in preparation for January 1st. Number one, if permitted by their host municipality, they will be able to co-locate or sell adult use products out of their same medical dispensary. So that's one. 2, each of those 55 dispensaries will be able to locate what we call a secondary site or a new storefront. Okay, and that new storefront doesn't have to be restricted to our little medical district. That can be anywhere in the the United States Bureau of Labor Statistic map of urban areas in the city or urban areas in the state. So in this area, the Bureau of Labor Statistics area is the entire 9-county region from like Kendall, DuPage, McHenry, on into Cook and Lake. So it's that big area. And there are roughly 35 or so dispensaries, medical dispensaries, that will be able to locate a secondary site in that big 9-county region. Okay? So prior to in preparation for opening their doors on January 1st, there could be 30 some odd other dispensaries sort of vying for space in that 9-county region, including Evanston. Okay, so then by the middle of next year, or actually earlier in 2020 to be awarded in the middle of next year, there are 75 other dispensaries, and those are the social equity applicants, and those will give priority to the communities that have been hit hardest by the war on drugs. And those have to do with, are you an applicant that comes from a zip code that has a disproportionately high rate of free school lunches? Or do you come from a zip code where there is a disproportionately high rate of people coming out of prison and locating there, or being arrested there and going to prison? Those are the considerations for that tranche of 75 social equity dispensaries. And then after that, there will be up to 110 dispensaries for everybody else. So the framework is that the existing operators sell adult use out of their existing dispensaries. They locate another one. Then the social equity applicants get to come in, and then everybody else. And then on top of that and around that, you'll have these other license opportunities, which are an infusion license, which would be somebody who would purchase perhaps bulk oil from a cultivation center. Where the plants are grown and processed into oil, and then they would infuse that into a product, a vape pen or a gummy or an edible or a tincture or a transdermal patch or a suppository or whatever they want to make. And then you have the craft grow, which is along the lines of a microbrewery, and the potential for a processor license down the road, which will be 3 to 5 years away. So that's kind of what you have to anticipate and to prepare for. And so your certificate of zoning compliance, that was relevant in a competitive application process because you had to show the state that if you were awarded a license, we can go ahead and locate in this particular zoning area. So that's the relevance of that. So I don't know if that answered your question or not. It probably absolutely didn't, but if it
was close enough. It was very informative. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So, are there any other questions? All right. So I guess the next thing on the agenda is the review of the standards.
Okay, the first standard be whether the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Comprehensive General Plan as adopted and amended from time to time by the City Council.
So what do people think? How is this?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't know? I mean, it's promoting business. It's promoting the. Excuse me? What? Yeah, okay, but no specific way that you can point out that it is. And if you're going to speak, Commissioner Pagozzi, if you're going to speak, please use the microphone.
Sorry. Well, I think it will it'll generate sales revenue, it'll generate traffic, and I think it's generally safer than people buying product
and
illegally as they do now.
Yeah, and promotes the general vitality of the city. So without any objection, maybe we just we say we've satisfied that with the idea of vitality, the tax revenue, and the. All right. So next item.
Whether the proposed amendment is compatible with the overall character of existing development in the immediate vicinity of the subject property.
Anyone want to state anything regarding
It
Commissioner
seems,
Sluss?
based on the restrictions that are being placed, locating them primarily in business districts, and the testimony related to the nature and appearance of the storefronts, that it would be compatible.
I would agree. All right, so that is satisfied. Whether the proposed amendment will have an adverse effect on the value of adjacent properties. There's, yeah, it might have a positive effect. I don't know.
Especially use process.
Yeah. Well, so. Right. So Mr. Mangum points out that would be the purview of the special use permit. So that would be taken on a case-by-case basis, regardless. So that would we could say that it would be satisfied here contingent upon the review of the special use. All right, and then adequacy of public facilities and services, which again are not specific, but I believe we've got zones that seem applicable. They're placed in the zones with limitations, and so that would be satisfied. So we have there are actually two things I think we're being asked to do. One is to make a recommendation on the dispensary portion, and then I believe staff, what is the wording on the other, make reference of the other licenses that will be coming down the line, referring those to possibly committee, the zoning committee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So we'll take those one by one, I think. So the first thing we can do is we can recommend approval as stated by staff, recommended by staff, or we can add modifications to those if we see any, or we can not approve. So do I hear any motion by anyone? Commissioner Pagozzi, you're
I'll make a motion. I move that we approve the proposed amendment as presented.
All right. Second?
Second?
Seconded, Goddard. All right.
Commissioner Draper?
Aye.
Commissioner Goddard?
Aye.
Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Pagozzi?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloss?
Aye.
And Chair Lewis.
Aye.
It is unanimous approval.
All right. We're also being asked to refer the discussion of additional regulations related to cannabis cultivation centers, processors, transporters, infusers, and craft growers to the zoning committee on a date to be determined. Is anyone willing to motion that?
So move.
There we go. Commissioner Goddard, second.
Second.
Commissioner Pagozzi. So,
All right. Commissioner Draper?
Aye.
Commissioner Goddard?
Aye.
Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Pagozzi?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloss?
Aye.
And Chair Lewis.
aye. All right. With that, let's see, we are back to the agenda. It's now time for public comment. Does anyone have any other public comment they would like to make? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Pagozzi.
Second?
Commissioner Goddard seconds. All in favor? Aye. All against? All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.